Hello Bloomington, I'm Mayor Tim Busse, and this is the Council Minute for the week of October 19th. This week, we received a thorough overview of current safety and crime issues in the city from our Chief of Police, Jeff Potts. We asked Chief Potts to prepare this report to Council after hearing concerns from residents like you about the perception that crime has been increasing in Bloomington and a feeling that the community may be less safe. Chief Potts laid out the year-to-date statistics for crimes reported in Bloomington in 2020. The summary of crimes puts them into two categories, Part 1 and Part 2 crimes. Part 2 crimes are lower-level offenses such as property crimes, status crimes, and less harmful acts against other people. Some examples of Part 2 crimes are possessing stolen property, disorderly conduct, fraud, and forgery. Part 1 crimes are the more violent crimes such as homicide, criminal sexual conduct, aggravated assault, burglary, and vehicle thefts. This might surprise some people, but in both categories, the total number of crimes is down from this same time last year. Part 2 crimes are down 26%, with more than 700 fewer crimes. Part 1 crimes are down 16%, more than 400 fewer crimes than last year. However, it's certainly concerning that some of the more violent crimes are seeing an uptick this year. There have been 25 more burglaries, 40 more vehicle thefts, and sadly, 3 more homicides. So what's going on? Well, that's a hard question to answer. The homicides have all been domestic in nature, meaning that the parties knew each other. Even the one that occurred in a hotel, it was a family-involved incident. Community resources and options for domestic violence victims have been more limited due to COVID, and we're doing everything we can to prevent future domestic deaths from happening. I've heard from a number of residents who have connected the perceived increase in crimes to the presence of homeless persons sheltered in some of Bloomington's hotels. Yes, our police department's calls for services have increased substantially because of the challenges posed by hotels operating as homeless shelters or being used by people living with housing instability. But the chief was very clear that not all calls for service to those hotels are for crimes. Many people in the homeless community have significant health issues, whether it's mental health, physical ailments, or chemical dependency. And our officers get called to take care of people who are in crisis. A quick sidebar, I want to take a moment to acknowledge that our police officers have done exceptional work throughout this pandemic and frankly, every day. They approach their work with professionalism and they consistently show compassion when dealing with some extremely challenging situations. And there's a reason for that. Our police department has put significant effort into officer training, especially training for how to approach individuals in mental health crisis and how to bring safe resolution to often volatile situations. Look, here's the bottom line. Whether the numbers say the crime is up or down, there's a feeling in the community that some areas are less safe. What the chief assured the city council is that the police department is working with our other departments to be aggressive and proactive in managing problem properties. They're working with the property managers and the social service agencies present in those hotels to increase security and to make sure management practices are focused on preventing negative behaviors. And here's another bottom line. Bloomington neighborhoods continue to be safe. And that's largely because of things that you do to ensure that neighborhoods are safe. You know your neighbors. You look out for each other. And that's what strong communities do. We are going to continue to focus on problem solving. And I have every confidence that our police department and other departments will do what's necessary to keep this community safe. This week was a milestone for the City Council on one of our strategic priorities, equity and inclusion. We unanimously adopted the city's new racial equity business plan. The business plan outlines the goals, strategies, resource needs, and performance and accountability measures that will guide the city's internal racial equity work over the next several years. The 4 overarching strategies in the plan are to have a workforce at the City of Bloomington that reflects the diversity of the community, fostering a culture that values and advances racial equity, committing to racial equity in the design of our services and programs, and committing to authentic and equitable community engagement. Over the last several years, I do believe we've made progress on the Council's strategic priority of advancing equity and inclusion. But without question, there's so much more work to be done. While we recognize that there is no single thing that can be done to resolve centuries of racial inequality, we are committed to learning from past mistakes and being intentional about moving the work forward. Thanks to our Racial Equity Coordinator, Faith Jackson, who developed this plan in consultation with our executive staff team and my City Council colleagues. The City of Bloomington has surveyed residents annually since 2012 to gauge opinion on a number of community issues and city services. The National Community Survey, or NCS, is conducted by the National Research Center. The NCS has a database of communities across the country that also acts as a national benchmark that lets us compare Bloomington results with how we measure up to similar cities around America. The NCS captures residents' opinions in 10 different areas. Here we go: economy, mobility, community design, utilities, safety, natural environment, parks and recreation, health and wellness, education, arts and culture, and inclusivity and engagement. The survey was sent to 3,300 randomly selected households in Bloomington, and 978 people responded. The 30% response rate is good, and to get a bit nerdy here, the survey provides a statistically valid scientific sample with a 95% confidence interval and a margin of error of plus or minus 4. The City Council will get a full presentation of the survey results on November 9th. Leading up to that date, we'll be sharing a different question or two each day on the city's social media. I want to touch on a few results this week on issues that are timely and relevant for the community. One of the most important questions we ask is how residents perceive the value of city services based on the taxes paid to support those services. When asked to rate the value of services for taxes paid to the City of Bloomington, 70% of residents said excellent or good. This year's favorable response is a 7-point increase over 2019 and 2018, when 63% of residents responded favorably. That's what we call statistically significant. In addition to being a big increase over 2019, that 70% favorable rating for the value of city services is higher than the national benchmark, meaning that Bloomington residents feel more positive about the value of taxes paid than do people in other communities around the country. And there's good reason for that. Did you know that the city's share of taxes for a median valued home in Bloomington is lower than most of our peer communities in Minnesota? Earlier, I talked about concerns in the community about crime. Public safety is one of those areas of focus in our survey, and we saw the heightened concerns that people have reflected in our survey results. Asked about the overall feeling of safety in Bloomington, 81% said they felt very or somewhat safe. That's a 6% decline from 2019, and that's the first year we have seen fewer people saying they feel safe. Previously, 86 or even 87% have responded favorably since we started asking that question back in 2014. The positive thing in the survey is that 96% of residents report feeling safe in their own neighborhood. That number has been very consistent every year, and I think that reflects the strength of Bloomington's community, its neighborhoods. Another subject that is interesting and connects to our racial equity business plan is how welcoming residents feel the city and the community are to people of different backgrounds. 75% of respondents said the city does an excellent or good job at making all residents feel welcome. And 72% rated the city positively at valuing and respecting residents from diverse backgrounds. However, only 61% positively rated the openness and acceptance of the community toward people of diverse backgrounds. I think this reflects how concerned people are after a very difficult summer of protests, tensions, and demands for racial justice, both locally and nationally. It's the first time we've asked these questions, and we will continue to ask those questions and to focus on community concerns about race and equity. Like I said, our city communications team will be rolling out survey results through our social media leading up to the full presentation on November 9th. Well, that's a wrap on this week's Council Minute. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Be well and stay safe, Bloomington.